hey, if you look up Gem's Art Studio, they have this beautiful Ukrainian sunflower. It's absolutely worth checking out. All the profits are going to go to help Ukrainian charity, so please check it out. It'll be great. All the links will be below in the description and probably here in the picture. But yeah, go help them out. Ukrainians are going through hell right now. This Organized Chaos video is brought to you by Gem's Art Studio. Gem's Art Studio is an online store that allows access to prints that you can use for most anything, obviously as just a picture, or as a wallpaper, or as a bookmark, or anything you can think of. You can find Gem's Art Studio at etsy.com/shop/Gem's Art Studio. This video is also brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. Hey, so today is officially the day when Fantastic Beasts 3 comes out in theaters when I'm releasing this, and I'm not going to be watching it. I'm not going to be covering any of that. Ever since J.K. Rowling came out against trans issues and actually has put her weight behind fighting trans issues, I mean, we're dealing with just people, and she's actively working to make their lives miserable, and I am not for it. I will not be doing anything to support that movie. I doubt I'll even be reacting to any reviews of it because I'm not going to watch it, so I won't have any basis of comparison. To get an idea of how bad Rowling is, we're going to look at this article here. J.K. Rowling criticizes reform bill that makes it easier for trans people to legally change genders. This came out just a fucking month ago. This is brand new. She's already fought against a bill to stop it. And, we can listen to the article. Let's try that.
J.K. Rowling criticizes reform bill that makes it easier for trans people to legally change gender. J.K. Rowling and Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, are at odds over the country's gender recognition reform bill after it was introduced to Parliament last week. The bill aims to simplify the means by which a trans person can legally change their gender through obtaining a gender recognition certificate. The certificate allows a trans person to receive a new birth certificate with their correct gender. The current process for receiving a gender recognition certificate dictates that applicants have to be medically diagnosed as having gender dysphoria, go through a minimum 2-year process and be aged over 18, The Times reports. The reform bill no longer mandates medical evidence of gender dysphoria and lowers the age requirement to 16. Under the proposed legislation, applicants would be required to live in their gender for at least 3 months before applying for a certificate, which would then be issued after another 3-month reflection period. Applicants would have to swear they intend to live as their gender for life, as any false claim would be a criminal offense carrying a prison sentence of up to 2 years. Rowling has used social media to publicly oppose the reform bill. As The Times reported, some groups have voiced concerns that the proposals could erode women's sex-based rights and access to women-only spaces and services, including hospital wards and refuges. The law Nicola Sturgeon's trying to pass in Scotland will harm the most vulnerable women in society, those seeking help after male violence, rape and incarcerated women, Rowling posted on Twitter. Statistics show that imprisoned women are already far more likely to have been previously abused. Sturgeon appeared on BBC Radio 4's The World at 1 this week and said she fundamentally disagreed with Rowling over the claim that the reform bill will harm the most vulnerable in society. The First Minister stressed that the bill is all about process and will not change safe spaces for women. This is about...
It seems insane, too, because she's talking about sexual harassment in prison. And I'm pretty sure trans women, if they're put into a men's prison, yeah, they're going to experience lots of sexual assault. Without a doubt. So, there's going to be shitty things happening in prison. That's a whole separate issue.
The process, an existing process by which people can legally change their gender, and it's about making that process less traumatic and inhumane for trans people, one of the most stigmatized minorities in our society, Sturgeon said. It doesn't give trans people any more rights, doesn't give trans people one single additional right that they don't have right now. Nor does it take away from women any of the current existing rights that women have under the Equalities Act. Rowling continued to oppose the reform bill in a March 7 Twitter post, writing, multiple women's groups have presented well-sourced evidence to Nicola Sturgeon's government about the likely negative consequences of this legislation for women and girls, especially the most vulnerable. All has been ignored. If the legislation is passed and those consequences ensue as a result, the SNP government can't pretend it wasn't warned. Sturgeon reminded BBC Radio 4 listeners that the rules haven't yet changed. The legislation was introduced to Parliament last week, and it will now go through a full legislative process with all the normal parliamentary scrutiny. Rowling has been the subject of controversy for several years now due to her gender beliefs and a series of anti-transgender tweets posted in 2020. Rowling argued at the time that discussing gender identity negates biological sex. Several Harry Potter stars have spoken out against Rowling for her beliefs, including Daniel Radcliffe. The actor wrote a letter that transgender women are women. Any statement to the contrary erases the identity and dignity of transgender people and goes against all advice given by professional healthcare associations who have far more expertise on this subject matter than either Joe or I. Sturgeon and Rowling's public disagreement over the gender recognition reform bill is taking place a month ahead of the release of Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore, the latest Harry Potter sequel in which Rowling serves as co-writer and co-producer. The film is set for release on April 8th in the United Kingdom and April 15th in the US.
So yeah, it sounds like she's fighting up against this bill. It sounds very similar to what she actually, she used her influence to stop a bill very similar to this from passing in, I believe it was Britain. But essentially, now in Scotland, you need a medical diagnosis to change your gender. And this is just saying, no, live as that gender for 3 months. And then once you initiate it, another 3 months, and then you can get it official. And here's the thing. I even think that's a bit restrictive. Identify as the gender you're comfortable with. I don't think that's a big deal. Do what makes you the happiest. As long as you aren't harming anybody else or you aren't harming yourself, do what makes you happy. That doesn't seem like a big deal, but instead she's fighting against people who just want to live their lives. I do not understand it. And as I've said before, I am a fan of J.K. Rowling. I was a fan of J.K. Rowling. I've read all the Harry Potter books, but I cannot stand this shit. So instead of covering anything from Fantastic Beasts or anything like that, I'm going to look up what is obviously the most anti-trans video on YouTube and debunk it. And oh, look. Ben Shapiro destroying transgenderism and abortion. Ben goddamn Shapiro. I'm sure he'll have some real zingers in this one. Let's check it out. Why is it in the middle?
You are.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids. So, how do you say that some people don't have privilege when you basically just said that trans people aren't valid? They're not a thing. They're just girls pretending to be boys or boys pretending to be girls.
Okay. Oh, someone's excited. Okay.
Biological, but gender is a completely different thing.
No, gender is not disconnected from sex. So.
It's not completely.
Well, yes, it is, Ben. Words can have different meanings. Yes, gender is separated from sex.
Disconnected, but it's still a cultural thing. It's still from society.
Okay. No, it is not in the mind. Okay, you're not a man if you think you're a man.
Well, you're not a biological man if you think you're a biological man, but if you wish to identify... Nobody's making an argument that a biological man is a biological woman. They're making the argument that, yeah, I may have been born one thing, but I wish to identify as another. That's a societal thing.
I didn't say pretending, or if I did, I shouldn't have said pretending. Let me amend.
You said playing.
Okay, I said a boy who thinks he's a girl. That's the usual phraseology I use. Not playing. I usually say a boy who thinks he's a girl or a girl who thinks he's a boy, which is technically what we're talking about here. As far as the actual psychological issues at play, it used to be called gender dysphoria or gender identity disorder. Now they call it gender dysphoria. The idea that sex or gender are malleable is not true.
Okay, your biological sex isn't really malleable, but how you wish to identify in society, I don't see why that isn't malleable. I mean, what's his argument? Because, yeah, identify in society as you wish, period.
Okay, and I'm not denying your humanity if you're a transgender person. I am saying that you are not the sex to which you claim to be. You're still...
I love this, because every argument I see against transgenderism, it always equates to they're trying to make it out like you're arguing that they want to change their biological sex. Nobody's making the argument to change your biological sex. You can't do that. That's not a thing. But you can identify under a different gender than you were born as. That is a thing. That is totally a thing.
still a human being, and you're a human being with an issue that I wish you Godspeed in dealing with in whatever way you see fit. But if you are going to dictate to me that I'm supposed to pretend that men are women and women are men, no. My answer.
No, they are just asking for you to respect their, how they want to represent themselves. That's all they're asking.
Is no. I'm not going to modify basic biology because it threatens your subjective sense of what you are.
Okay, but you're still saying these kids should not be accepted because they don't really fit in either place. They can't just
I'm saying that the Boy Scouts have a standard. You must be a biological boy to be a Boy Scout. You have to be a boy to be a Boy Scout.
Wow, I hope they don't have that standard. That's pretty shitty.
In the name Boy Scouts. Because this is a very.
That's a pretty weak response. It's in the name Boy Scouts. Well, if you want to identify as a boy, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Because for all of human history, boy meant boy and girl meant girl. Boy did not mean girl.
Yes, and in all of human history, things evolve. And now, someone might be born as a boy who wishes to later identify as a girl, or vice versa. And I don't see a problem with that. It doesn't affect me how they wish to identify, and if it makes them happy, go do it. Why does it affect you, Ben? Why do you care?
And if I call you a moose, are you suddenly a moose? Okay, if I redefine our terms. No, yes, that's.
Yeah, it's the helicopter argument. It's fucking stupid. Nobody.
Right, men and women are a completely different thing. This is true. Have you ever met a man or a woman? They're completely different.
Actually, no, they're not that far off. Yeah, this argument, they're completely different, seems crazy. There's some biological differences when you're born. Completely different? Not a whole lot. Not as much as you'd expect.
You can't say you're a cat. It's not a thing. It's genders. It's not saying you're.
Okay, why is that? I don't understand. Why? Okay, let me ask you this. I won't ask you how old. I will ask you how old you are. Okay, because you're young enough that it's probably not insulting to ask you. So.
I'm 22, so I'm probably gonna be naive, right?
No. Why aren't you 60?
Because age is a concrete thing identified in our society. And sure, she wants to identify as 60. I don't have an issue with that. That's not what we're talking about, though, Ben.
Why aren't you 60?
Because she doesn't want to identify as 60, and that would be weird, because you usually want to be. I mean, that's the thing. When it comes to age, we typically like to be perceived as younger than we are. Especially when you get older, you like to be perceived as younger. So that is something we do like to mess with the perception of. We don't, as the older we get, the less we want to look like our age. So I don't think that's working towards Ben's argument as much as he thinks it is. Well, I mean, it'd be dumb. Why if you're 22, would you want to be 60?
And why can't you identify as 60? What is the problem with you?
She can dress up as a 60-year-old and call herself 60. I genuinely do not care about that. That would be weird. And, just based on time, it's tougher to get around that. We don't... that's the thing. Sex is become kind of... I don't know if it always has been this. I think I've heard it's always been this in a psychological sense. But it's been newer to me, the idea that sex is kind of like a spectrum. Well, not sex. Gender is a spectrum. Sex is kind of what you're born as. And that can be kind of a spectrum, too. You have people born, XXY chromosomes and stuff like that. It's not exact. But it's more exact. And then the spectrum of gender is kind of what you wish to identify as. I personally don't have a strong issue if we want to do a thing where people identify as a 60-year-old. But again, we would if we started setting up stuff like that, there became a big call for it, sure. But it would be trans issues where there's biological sex and there's gender, what you want to identify as and what you're born as. And then you do the same thing of age, what age you'd wish to identify as and what you're born as. So if you want to do a thing where you identified as an older age than you are, I wouldn't have an issue with that at all. It'd be weird, but okay.
Identifying as 60.
It's not the same as gender. You can't just.
You're right. Age is significantly less important than gender. You can't magically change your gender.
Is it? Is it, Ben? What's your argument?
You can't magically change your sex. You can't magically change your age.
You can still legally change it.
They are the ones that make the science argument. They're talking about magic.
People recognize
You can't legally change your age, by the way.
Obviously, you can change your name, you can change your sex, you can change your identity.
Just because you can do things legally doesn't mean that they are correct biologically. You could do lots of things in the
Nobody's talking about changing your biological sex, Ben. Nobody's talking about that. Nobody.
past that were incorrect biologically and correct legally. For a long period of time in the United States, sterilization of the mentally ill took place. That didn't make it okay. Skinner versus Oklahoma. Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote the decision.
Right.
Okay, what does that have to do with this? What does that have to do with this? We're talking about people who want to change something, not people being forced.
I don't understand how you these children that have gender.
It's not a matter of open-minded and accepting. I want them to get treatment that they see fit, but that's not involving me. The idea behind the transgender movement as a civil rights movement is the idea that all of their problems would just go away if I would pretend that they were the sex to which they claim membership. That's nonsense.
Well, yeah. I mean, if everybody just respected everybody else and how they wish to live, yeah, that would resolve a lot of issues.
Transgender suicide rate is 40%. It is 40%. And according to the...
It's actually very high, especially if they're not able to identify as the gender that they wish to, which is part of the issue. Let them identify as the gender they're comfortable with. Let them be happy.
According to the Anderson School at UCLA, it makes no difference. There's a study that came out last year. It makes no difference, virtually no difference, statistically speaking, as to whether people recognize you as a transgender person or not, which suggests there's a very high comorbidity between transgenderism, whatever that mental state may be, and suicidality. That has nothing to do with how society treats
Do you think it could be because of they're bullied at school?
No, I don't think that. I do not think that the discrepancy. First of all, I'm against bullying of any sort. Okay, the idea that somebody would beat somebody up is terrible. Okay, as somebody who's viciously bullied in high school, I'm not a fan of bullying. But the idea that the normal suicide rate across the United States is 4%. The suicide rate in the transgender community is 40%.
Yes, and it actually makes a lot of sense because you have this society forcing their gender to conform to their biological sex, and they don't. And they'd be happier if they didn't conform. So let them be happier.
The idea that 36% more transgender people are committing suicide because people are mean to them is ridiculous.
Well, they probably are a lot meaner to them, Ben. A lot meaner. Kids in school are cruel. I can't imagine a transgender kid in school. They'd probably be super mean. If they aren't passing, they'd probably be super mean to them, Ben. Super mean.
It's not true, and it's not backed by any science that anyone can cite. It is pure conjecture. In fact, it's not even true that bullying causes suicide, according to a lot of studies. For example, in the
Okay, so you're saying bullying? Is he defending bullying now? This is where his destroying of transgenderism is becoming a defense of bullying?
Black community, where the idea is supposedly that America is a racist society, blacks are bullied a lot. Okay, in the black community has significantly lower suicide rates than in the white community. In fact, in third world countries, the suicide rate is significantly lower than in first world countries. Suicide actually seems to be a privilege of the upper classes, if you actually look at it from a financial perspective. So the idea that suicidality is directly a result of...
I'm tempted to look it up because I suspect this. Let's look at this up. I suspect this is bullshit. So I'm not seeing much in the way of suicide rates by class. It does look like black people have a lower suicide rate. There's no way he has a citation here. No, he just saying shit. I wish I could find it by class. Because otherwise, he's just saying shit, and I don't know. I find it very suspicious. But maybe not. But... yeah, no, it's interesting. Interesting. I don't I don't see how it does anything to, like, really affirm his argument. What is his exact argument? Anyway, what are we dealing with?
In fact, in third world countries, the suicide rate is significantly lower than in first world countries.
That's
suicide actually seems to be a privilege of the upper classes.
That's right. He's defending bullying.
Perspective. So the idea that suicidality is directly a result of people like me saying, no, men are not women and women are not men, it's not true. It's also...
So you think it doesn't impact...
So you think it's good to do that, Ben? You think it's good to make people's lives more miserable just because it doesn't increase suicide rates? Is that your argument? Yeah, it's okay to make somebody's life reasonable. As long as you don't increase the suicide rate, it's fine. Be an asshole. He's essentially defending He's not essentially. He is defending bullying right now. He's saying it's fine. It doesn't increase suicide rate. Go for it.
Impact their identity at all, or their depression, or how they feel about themselves?
I think the idea that you're going to sacrifice the entire society's proper definition of sex because...
Definitions are always changing. And nobody talked about changing the definition of sex. It's gender. And it's debatable whether or not we're even talking about changing the definition, or... It's always been that way, and now we're just identifying the proper definition of gender. Quite frankly, I don't think it matters. I do not think it matters. Let people identify how they wish to identify. I don't think it's that big a deal.
Because you think that there is in legal terms, somebody with an eggshell skull, meaning that somebody who has a pre-existing condition that makes them more susceptible to criticism, that is not a way to run a society. You can't sacrifice truth because some people are going to actually suffer because of the truth.
The truth. Yeah, but I mean, here's the thing about biological sex. You don't know anybody's biological sex unless you ask them to drop their drawers in front of you. You actually don't know that. Unless you've seen their crotch, you don't know that. So what we identify in people is gender, what their outward appearance is. And if they want their outward appearance to be feminine and they were born male and they wish to be identified as a woman, then sure, I don't see the issue at all. Or vice versa. Yeah.
Plus, there's no evidence whatsoever that the suicide rate would go down in the transgender...
So we should only do stuff if it affects the suicide rate. That's his whole argument. If it doesn't reduce the suicide rate, we're allowed to do it. We're allowed to bully people as long as it doesn't affect the suicide rate. Jesus Christ.
Community in any marked way if people just started pretending that men were women and women were men. We're trying that experiment now. We'll find out whether it works. So far, no evidence.
Have you talked to a group of trans...
I don't care if it affects the suicide rate. If somebody is born as a biological male and wishes to identify their gender as female or vice versa, and it makes them happy, then let them. What's the problem? They're not asking you to do anything other than not shit on them for that. That's all they're asking. They're not asking any special treatment or anything. They just want to live their lives as normal human beings. Why is that such a big deal?
People at all instead of this group of like white people?
I'm more than happy to talk to a group of any people who will have me, but usually they protest me.
Okay, last question.
Well, he is awful. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Typically, I'm of the camp of let them speak, let them say their terrible thing. Let's get it out and have it out in the battlefield of ideas. But man, a lot of the bad ideas have gotten really vocal recently. I don't know. I'm still too much of a free speech just to say silence people. But it did work nicely on Donald Trump. Yeah, I mean, I'm too free speech. He should have his say, but God, I can't believe he has such a big platform.
About your Planned Parenthood thing. So why do you think it's not about controlling women's bodies and just about the separate life? Like, after the baby is born, how come when people don't care about them? They don't care where they end up in foster care, they don't care about the mother being poor? Like...
Okay, I do care about the mother being poor, I do care about foster care.
Okay, but why don't you advocate for that, though? Because
For what?
Planned Parenthood is supposed to prevent abortions.
Because, Planned Parenthood doesn't prevent abortions. They perform hundreds of thousands of abortions a year. They perform 300,000 abortions a year. They're the leading abortion mill in the United States.
Evidence for that, though.
I That's the thing. Planned Parenthood largely, they will help with abortions if they're needed or if they're wanted. They try to help you out, though. Planned Parenthood is an organization I'm largely fine with.
That they perform 300,000 abortions a year from Planned Parenthood. That's my evidence.
Well, what's the other option, Ben? Coat hanger abortions? Would that be better? Because abortions are going to happen.
They don't dispute that. No one disputes that.
Like birth control and cancer.
I'm not anti-birth control.
I know.
Birth control is extraordinarily cheap.
That provides affordable birth control, which would in turn.
Okay, they're not the only people in America who provide affordable birth control. You can go get a pack of condoms down at the local CVS for $12.
Well, yeah, but I believe Planned Parenthood provides it for free, right?
Condoms are great. People need medication too.
Yeah.
All right, so Planned Parenthood, you fill out this thing and they will mail you free condoms. Free is a lot better price than $12. So yeah, I would say they make it more available.
Yes, and it's true that most forms of birth control are also extraordinarily cheap on an annualized basis. Unless you have a severe problem, most birth control is very cheap and readily available. And I'm not against people going and getting that from Planned Parenthood. As you may have noticed, I'm mostly against abortion. If you want to go...
No, abortion, in my opinion, is not a good thing. But it's a thing that people should be allowed to do. It's not my right to tell a woman what she can do with her body. It's not, any more than it is her right to tell me what I can do with mine. It's not. And there will be instances where abortions are necessary, such as when it risks the life of the mother. Yeah, obviously. Abortion is a sad thing, but it's sometimes necessary, and I don't think we have the right to be telling a woman, you know, hey, we don't care if you're not ready for a baby, you have to have it anyway. I think that's awful. We shouldn't do that.
Go to Planned Parenthood and get a contraceptive, go for it. I don't care. I do care when you start killing babies. This is a problem for me.
But what about in rape and...
We're not talking about killing babies. These babies haven't been born yet, Ben. Would you have an issue with a person masturbating and, you know, because then they're killing off sperm? What about all those, what about when you have sex and none of the sperm fertilize? Is that murder? Do they all have to fertilize? This argument gets really fucking stupid really fucking fast. So, yeah, for me, I draw the line, you know, if the baby can survive outside the mother's womb, then essentially that's a baby. Anytime before that, yeah, go ahead and do an abortion if you think it's necessary.
incest situations.
Okay, so this is so here's the question.
It's different, yes.
I mean, this is a long conversation. I'm enjoying it actually, which is why I'm allowing you to stay. But the question of rape and incest. First of all, important to note, rape and incest are not only a vast minority of abortion cases. They're an extraordinarily low percentage of abortion cases.
So, if they're a low minority, does that mean we ignore them? And there's also ones that where it's rape and incest, but they don't want to admit it. So do we just ignore that then? Do we just make them give birth to these babies that they definitely don't want and have been forced upon them? Do we do that? Because that seems terrible.
If we can first stipulate that all the other abortions are bad, then we can talk about that other one. Can we do that?
What? No. Fuck you.
Are all the other abortions bad, or are those ones okay? And you're just using this as an excuse to make the other ones okay.
They're all okay.
Ah, good. Someone who's honest.
There you go. Yeah, they're all okay, Ben. Fuck off.
Who's the honest fellow? Who's okay? Yay, honest people. Good. I like the honesty. Okay, so all abortions are okay. So a sign that I can't read because it has lots of words on it. Okay, so I have one question for you and one question only on abortion. Does the vagina, the vaginal canal, magically confer personhood? Answer.
What the fuck does
the
that
vagina
mean?
magically confer personhood? Yeah, raised hands are okay. You, sir.
No, the first breath does.
The first breath confers personhood. Okay, so if the baby is in the womb and is exactly the same size and has not yet breathed, and you take a knife and you stab the baby in the head, a fully formed 9-month-old baby, it is not a human. The only thing that makes it a human is when it takes a breath. It has to independently breathe.
I mean, I'm going to be honest.
It's why he's being super specific, because he wants to make this whole baby murder argument. It's fucking stupid. you want to say, oh, a baby's born at conception. I could say it's a baby first starts at the fucking sperm. It gets fucking stupid. And it's ridiculous.
To be honest, I'm going to stick to it, yeah, because I'm also pro capital punishment and pro selective suicide. So I'm going to stick with it.
Selective suicide? Yeah, I assume you mean elective suicide.
I mean elective suicide.
Elective suicide. Okay.
Yes, I'm not going to make someone commit suicide.
Okay, that's good, because that wouldn't be suicide, that'd be homicide. That, by the way, I'm for capital punishment too, because people who kill people should be killed, but babies who have not killed people should not. And this is my basic position on abortion. So let me...
But Ben, nobody's saying you have to have an abortion or your wife has to have an abortion or whatever. But there will be instances where a person is pregnant with a child and they don't want to have a child. Who are you to say they have to have a child? Who are you to do that? Because here's the thing, like if you were making arguments for the adoption system, saying, listen, we gotta fix up this adoption system, we gotta make it great, we gotta make sure foster kids are doing great, because our foster system's fucked in this country. If you were making that argument and then the anti-abortion argument, then I would be like, okay, I don't see eye to eye with you, because I still feel like a woman should have the right to her body. But, at least you're making an argument. But you're not. You are essentially for child rights before they're born, and then you're also for the human rights when they turn 18. Because before they're born, you defend them because they can't be aborted, because that's child murder. Then once they're 18, they need to go off to war. Those are your positions, Ben. And I hate that you just don't care about the children when they're actually children, when they need your actual help. You're too busy fighting for fucking fetuses that haven't even developed a fucking heartbeat, instead of fighting for actual children on the streets that need fucking help. It's disgusting.
But I'll get your answer because you're the one who asked the question. Are you willing to stipulate that all the other abortions are bad, just rape and incest bother you?
No.
I mean, no, I believe a woman should have the right to
Got it. So it's an excuse, right? So it's an excuse so that we can say that,
It's an excuse. Well, Ben, are you willing to discuss those? Do you think abortion in the case of rape and incest are unacceptable? Is that what you think?
You can take the marginal case and then say that the marginal case applies to all cases. Okay, that's again, faulty thinking. But if you want me to answer specifically on rape and incest, here is my basic answer. Rapists should be castrated or killed. You shouldn't kill babies. End of story.
Wow, that's pretty shitty. But he's just talking about punishing the rapist, then forcing the mother to raise this child on their own. A child that they didn't want, that was definitely forced upon them, and forcing them to raise it on their own, potentially on their own with no help. You gonna have any social programs to help her? No, you're gonna be against that, Ben. Yeah, it's super shitty.
Are they ever castrated and killed? Most rapists don't even get convicted.
I agree, and that's usually the left.
And lots of women don't like to come out that they've been raped either. That's a big problem.
Side of the aisle, because the left side wants to let them out after 5 years in prison. I want them castrated or killed.
I want them rehabilitated, and if they can't be rehabilitated, then life in prison. But yeah, we need to work on our whole criminal justice system because it needs to focus on rehabilitation.
I'm telling you what my belief is. My belief is not public policy at the moment. But I think, would you agree with me on that one? Can we at least get a little agreement to finish this particular parlay? Okay, should rapists be castrated or killed?
Well, yes.
Okay, good, yeah, okay, we agree. Thanks.
So,
that was him destroying transgenderism and pro-abortion arguments. That was weak sauce. Yeah, Ben Shapiro's lame. I guess nothing new there. Yeah, I find it interesting. He's going to some... Where was that even at? Where? Ben Shapiro's Q&A Fair State Authority. So he just goes to his college campus and talks to these kids. Whoop-de shit. I wouldn't call that destroying anything. You're being very specific with who you're talking to. You're not talking to anybody with any sort of debate experience. And you have the microphone. You are center stage and you have the microphone. They are not on equal footing. They are in the audience Their mic might be a bit shitty setup. That is so lame. I'd like to see you actually do a serious debate, which I know you've done, but it's always been cringe. But yeah, essentially I'd like to say J.K. Rowling sucks, Ben Shapiro sucks, trans women are women, trans men are men.
They think order and chaos are somehow opposites and try to control what won't be.
I used to fuck guys like you in prison.